Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders could cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs. Divisional champs. NFC champs. And world champs.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour. We call it a victory green hour here on this Tuesday evening, where the Philadelphia Eagles totally dominate the Pittsburgh Steelers 35-13 in a game that wasn't even that close, in all honesty. The Eagles completely controlled the game. It was their best full 60-minute effort of the season. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, I have no gripes. I mean, we're going to figure something out to gripe about. But when it comes to this past Sunday's game, the Eagles did what they needed to do coming out of the bye, able to get some guys out of the game early, especially with the Thursday night game coming up in a couple days.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it was a game that we're winning the games that in prior years we would expect to win but wouldn't win. We're actually not just winning these games, we are dominating the majority of these games. And this game against the Steelers was no different than some of the other ones. And I actually saw a couple posts from the Painted Lines gang talking about strength of schedule, because we opened up the season with a bottom 5 strength of schedule. And because of how completely ridiculous this season has been in the NFL, we have the 12th hardest schedule per win percentage when we played teams. So technically, we can't use it as an excuse, but technically there's a lot of teams with wins and records that they have no business having whatsoever. So it's a pretty skewed season, but this would go for all 31 other teams. So there's no excuse. This would be for everybody. So it's been a wild season, but to be on top at 7-0 and to finally see us get some breathing room at the top of the NFC East is nice.
Yeah, we got a nice little game and a half, 2-game lead in the division. And the people that you're talking about are Cowboy fans. You're like, oh, the Eagles haven't played anybody. We did beat the Vikings. We beat the Vikings, who are second in the conference. We beat the Cowboys, who are third in the conference. So I don't want to hear that. And we've been beaten. Yes, we've beaten the teams that are on our schedule. If we haven't beaten anybody, so you're telling me the Cowboys suck and aren't nobody. You're telling me the Vikings suck and aren't nobody. Oh, well, the Eagles are beating them. They've taken care of business, and they got business to take care of this Thursday.
No. The Cowboys fans just say something would say, we didn't have Dak Prescott. That's not the real Cowboys. Just going to throw that out there. If there's one in the comments to defend yourself, please do.
Yeah, right. So before we get started, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. Follow the Painted Lines on Twitter and YouTube at the Painted Lines, and follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at EOP Sports or Edge of Philly Sports. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We usually do, on Tuesdays, we do a reaction show. Fridays, we do a preview show. Kind of hard when there's a Thursday night game this week. So we are going to condense that into this one episode. We're going to try to spend half the time on, probably less than that, because the game didn't really matter on Sunday. I mean, it mattered, but the Eagles totally dominated on Sunday against the Steelers. So we'll spend some time on that, and then we'll get you ready for the Houston Texans game in 2 days, as we are here in this Philly versus Houston week. As a side note, I'm shocked the NFL didn't change their time of Game 5 of the World Series on Thursday. Personally, I'm watching the Eagles game. The Phillies will be. I'll switch over to the Phillies maybe on a commercial at halftime, but other than that, I'm an Eagles guy. I'm watching the Eagles game. I don't care if it's 1-5 and 1 Texans. And then on Sunday, if there's a potential Game 7, it'll be 8:03, and it's going to be now. They're kind of smart in this, keeping it at 8 o'clock, because it's one game they have to put up with. If they were going to do an early game, they have zero shot against the NFL. But it is the Chiefs and Titans. A lot of people like the Chiefs, so it'll be interesting if there's a Game 7, what the ratings are like nationally. Obviously, in Philly, the ratings are going to, for baseball, will trounce the Sunday night game. But we'll see we'll even see if it gets to a Game 7. And as I forgot to mention, if you're live here with us on the stream, comment your thoughts on the game on Sunday against the Steelers, and when we get into the Houston Texans preview, kind of your thoughts on that and how do you think the game will play out. So Connor, before we jump into the game, I do want to quickly, today was the trade deadline. The Eagles didn't make any moves. Obviously, Howie probably put some feelers out, just didn't find anything he liked. Nyheim Hines got traded to Buffalo. Bradley Chubb and Jeff Wilson got traded to Miami. Edmonds got traded back to Denver. There was 10 moves today, and it was an NFL record for a trade deadline day. What do you think was the biggest move, and what are your thoughts on some of the moves that were made today?
I would probably say that the TJ Hawkinson move was the biggest move because, I mean, of all the teams who made a big splash, like in division too, it was a lot to give up for a tight end. It was like a 2 and a 3 and then a 6 for Hawkinson and a 4 or something along those lines. That's a lot to give up for a tight end, but then they lost Irv Smith, who's been struggling with injuries. He lost all of last season with the meniscus tear. He's now struggling with an ankle injury this year. Very inconsistent. I think he's number 1 in drops among tight ends. He's got, I think we witnessed 2 of them in the game against the Vikings in week 2. Or week 3, whatever week that was, where I think he had 2 huge drops against it. I know he had 1 huge drop that was a house call for sure if he makes it. So they had a lot of trouble there. And like eventually, Dalvin Cook's probably bound to miss some time. You can't lean on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen constantly. Adam Thielen's probably bound to miss some time. They needed another offensive piece. And things are clicking for them, even though I feel like they're kind of a fraudulent 6-1, not in regards to schedule or anything. I just didn't expect them to be there. I don't feel like they're a team that, like, come playoff time is going to be able to hang with the big teams. But maybe they can. Maybe they will surprise me. But this is a move that says we're in it now. We want to win it. We need to help Kirk Cousins. We need to give Kirk Cousins no excuses. The Bradley Chubb move was also very big. The only thing there is it going to be a very expensive rental, or are they going to lock Bradley Chubb down long term?
I think you lock him down long term with what you're sending back. You have to lock him down long term, but that's huge for Miami. Miami is definitely like, you're going up against Buffalo and KC. You have to have guys who can get after those quarterbacks. You have to have guys who don't give those guys a lot of time in the pocket and can keep them contained in that pocket. So I think that that's vitally important because after those 2 teams in the AFC, it is wide open. Just like in the NFC, you got pretty much 2 teams that are really at the top running away with it, and then it's wide open. So that's why some of these teams, like, people kind of judge the Christian McCaffrey move. I still think the Niners will be a top team in the NFC. I think they can be a top team too. I think they can be a top team too. They have a lot of injuries defensively right now. Exactly. So, like, I think that there's going to be some teams start to get back to where they should be. But, I mean, of the moves that really were big and that are going to impact right away, I think, like, the Bradley Chubb deal in the AFC, TJ Hawkinson in the NFC was a big one. And bringing in Jeff Wilson's just more comfort for Mike McDaniel to run the offense that he wants to run there with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, which is a reincarnation of the 2-headed monster of a backfield he had prior to injuries for both of them that he had in San Francisco. And I think the most puzzling was what the Bears did. You trade Robert Quinn, you trade Roquan Smith to Baltimore, and then today you trade for Chase Claypool. Like, what are they doing? Are they trying to win? Like, that made no sense. And then Green Bay not doing anything also didn't make sense. Apparently, they offered a 2nd-round pick for Chase Claypool. Not sure how valid that is, but Chicago's 2nd round is going to be a lot nicer. So I don't know about the way Green Bay's playing right now. This is true. But yeah, I would agree with you. If I were to pick a shock and move, it's that Green Bay stood pat. They needed to help Aaron Rodgers out on the receiving side of the football, and they did nothing. Like, I just can't believe that. And somebody tweeted, I can't remember who tweeted, but they said the fact that the Green Bay Packers got rid of one of the best receivers in football and thought that they could replace him with 2 rookie wide receivers, one of them who is not even from the FBS,
They're from the
Christian
FCS.
Watson, yeah.
They don't necessarily translate all that well to the NFL level. And you thought that was going to be a 100% perfect. That's a 2-for-1 swap that's going to work out perfectly. That just goes to show you, I don't want to say Devontae Adams makes Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers needs a true number one wide receiver to help him.
Is also missing Aaron Rodgers right now, I bet, with what he's doing with the Raiders. And then one more.
That was ugly on Sunday by the Raiders, by the way.
Calvin Ridley getting traded to Jacksonville. That could be an underrated move. And we talked about it last year. Remember, the Eagles had it in place where they were going to acquire Calvin Ridley, and how things could have changed if the betting scandal didn't happen and the Eagles got Calvin Ridley. There's no A.J. Brown, and who knows what the season is looking like. And transitioning to this past Sunday's game, A.J. Brown had a hell of a game, 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts probably had his best game, easily his best game of the year, throwing the football. We talked about, we know that he can run the football. We know that the Eagles can run the football. And they only had 6 passing touchdowns coming into the game in 6 weeks. That's not good. And Jalen Hurts went out and threw 4 touchdown passes, 3 to A.J. Brown, 1 to Zach Pascal, spreading the ball around. Devontae Smith had a bad drop, but still he was able to catch some balls. Quez Watkins even had a target, got his customary 1 target this week. But yeah, the Eagles offense, whatever the coaches did during the bye week, it worked because they put in some brand new things, and the Eagles came out firing on all cylinders right away.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things Jalen Hurts has caught the most flack for, and I noticed it amongst, when Eagles fans go at it with Cowboys fans in the comments. Cowboys fans would always be like, oh, how can you say this is your franchise quarterback? You only have 4. It's not even just Cowboys fans. It's just fans saying, how can you lean on a quarterback who's only thrown you 6 passing touchdowns in 6 games? But at the end of the day, are we getting the wins? We're definitely getting the wins. And would these wins be enough to hang with some of the bigger teams? I think we could go pound for pound with Buffalo. Could we beat Buffalo? I don't think so. I think Buffalo's offense is more explosive. Could we go pound for pound with KC? I feel a little more comfortable with that because it's the Patrick Mahomes show. There, it's about containing the quarterback. But the fact that he could go out there and he threw 4 touchdown passes of 25 plus yards. These weren't just 4 touchdown passes of here's a check down run for 30 yards. These were 4 big boy throws. He put it up there for A.J. Brown. He put it where only he knew A.J. Brown could get it. And he did it 3 times.
The first one I thought was going to be picked. The first one I thought was going to be picked by Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he just split the double team. And it was awesome. It was great throws, great catches. And that's what we want to see from Jalen Hurts. And I get when we see some people, or when some people say, your quarterback's not throwing touchdowns, that I get it. But we want to know if Jalen can be the franchise quarterback. And because again, I'm of the belief you can't win a Super Bowl by being a running team. You have to be able to throw the football. And this is a good start coming out of the bye. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to do the same thing this week against a very poor Houston team. And then they get the mini bye, maybe add some more plays before Washington on Monday night. They can continue the roll. This is the best franchise start, 7-0. And people there's a lot of people that are talking about so what game are you going to watch Thursday night? Are you going to watch game 5 of the World Series or watch a meaningless game or week 9, regular season game in the playoffs? And what the Eagles win, this is a franchise best 8-0 start that we're talking about here. This isn't some, this Eagles team is hitting on all cylinders. And they proved it on Sunday. Look, I like Mike Tomlin a lot, and I don't think that the struggles in Pittsburgh are Mike Tomlin's fault. And he has not had a losing season. He's had a couple 8-8s. This is probably going to be his losing. Kenny Pickett's not the guy. I don't think Kenny Pickett is a good quarterback. Doesn't help that T.J. Watt is hurt. So their offensive line is bad. They just traded their second best receiver, third best receiver. George Pickens didn't have any catches on Sunday, which was a shocker. I mean, I think George Pickens has a chance to be good. And, you got to give credit to the Eagles secondary. The Eagles secondary was really good again. Now, again, it wasn't against the best quarterback. They're not going up against the best quarterback this week. So the big question is, how will they fare when they go up against a legit quarterback? That was a question we had last year. They failed multiple times. But as of right now, with the teams that are on the schedule, the teams that they're playing, they are handling their business, and it's fun to watch.
Absolutely. It is so much fun to watch because they're showing that, they're not one of those teams who you see all these point differentials and you see a lot of teams who are winning their games by 7 point a score or less. Like there are games where we are dominating. There are games that end up being close. But the point is we are able to dominate. We are able to bring the offense on a level that we haven't been able to bring it on in the past couple of seasons, which is massive. And Jalen Hurts, he said a bunch of those 4 passing touchdowns of 25 plus yards, I think was a first in Eagles history. He has won his last 10 straight regular season starts. Of course, that rules out, the all ugly, mighty Tampa Bay playoff game. But that is a franchise record for the Philadelphia Eagles. He is setting franchise records left, right, and center. And when you look at these graphics, the people that like NBC puts up, you look at like ESPN puts up, he is hanging with some really, really good company in regards to most rushing yards in X amount of time, most rushing and passing together, most rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns in X amount of time, so on and so forth. There are so many stats that he is standing out amongst, he is standing out as a man among boys, amongst some of these quarterbacks. And we can't even argue it anymore because we can pick apart things in the game, and we see people do it. Like I saw Shane do it. Shane Half, part of the Painted Lines, he did it, and people were ripping him because he's trying to find some things to criticize. There are always going to be things that we can criticize, and we should continue to look at ways he could improve. Does he have a pocket he could have climbed, gave himself some more time and made a throw? That's the difference between, being Josh Allen or being Patty Mahomes or being one of those top 3, top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL and being just an average franchise quarterback who maybe, like Kirk Cousins, who can't get it in primetime, who can't get it when it matters the most. That's going to be what separates the boys from the men. And we want Jalen Hurts to be someone who can see those things, improve on those things. And there's obviously going to be criticisms that we can find, although there was very few that we could find in this game. He had an incredible game. And it always feels good when you get to see the backup quarterback come out in the fourth quarter. You've done your business. I'm sure Jalen Hurts would have loved to have gone out there and put up more points, but that was huge. And Miles Sanders, another good game. I talked about Miles Sanders as being my guy. Obviously, I had a funny feeling about Kenneth Gainwell. That was completely wrong, and I would have left field, and it was a bad feeling. But Miles Sanders with another game when called upon, 9 carries, 78 yards, 8.7 yards per carry. That's huge. And then the offensive line, you cannot say enough good things about that offensive line and their ability to protect. They continue to give Jalen Hurts the time that he needs. They continue to open things up so that open up running lanes, to open up places he can scramble to, buy him that extra bit of time. That's going to be huge going down the stretch. It's vital that those guys continue to stay healthy because we need a healthy offensive line because I think it plays so much more into why Jalen Hurts is who he is over these last 7 games than people want to talk about.
Yeah. Fat Batman. And Jason Kelsey was able to wear the Batman mask the day before Halloween. It's always nice when you can get some of the young guys out there, get the young offensive line guys some playing time. Cam Jurgens got out there. Talking about the Eagles defense, Najee Harris was bottled up the entire game. We mentioned George Pickens not doing much of anything the whole game. Deontay Johnson didn't do much. Chase Claypool threw a touchdown pass. It took on a 4th down, took a trick play for Pittsburgh to score a touchdown. But yeah, the Eagles just handled the business the way that they were supposed to handle business. And yeah, one of the biggest, we don't want to keep this all positive. One of the biggest concerns is Jordan Davis. He had has a high ankle sprain, might be out 4 to 6 weeks potentially. We haven't heard any final word on that. It is concerning. But if there's an area in which the Eagles can afford an injury, it's defensive tackle. They have so many bodies there, and they put so much money in that position, so many assets in that position, that if there is one position that they can afford, it is that position. But it does suck though, because Jordan Davis has been coming on, and he's probably going to get into there more and more as the season goes along. Now, for a guy that big too, not if it's a true high ankle sprain and he can't be on it, how does that affect his weight? That could be an issue. So who knows how long it might take for him to get back into the swing of things. But that is a concern. And then I guess the other concern is going to be special teams. Britton Covey did nothing again. Can we stop with this? Stop with it. I thought today that the Eagles would make a move for somebody that could help on the offense or defense, but also could return kicks and punts. Naeem Hines, he went to Buffalo. Desmond King, who could have helped provide some depth at safety and corner, but he stayed in Houston. They're the type of names I was hoping for, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I like Britton Covey more.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to get him to say anything nice about the Sixers or anything that he likes about the Sixers unless they're on a losing streak. That's probably the best you're ever going to get from him. Fitness Roofer, I agree with this one. Surprised how he didn't make a move on safety depth. I'm actually surprised about that too. When the Naeem Hines report came out, I did put on our Twitter, in order of preferred, where I wanted to see them go. I believe it was, I put running back 2, safety 3, defensive tackle 3/4, and then punt kick returner, because a punt kick returner could have been an RB2, could have been a safety 3. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to see him make a move at safety. We have seen what happens when there is no Marcus Epps or when there is no Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. Marcus Epps is only as good as who seems to be across from him. As much as he has improved, he is not a guy who can handle it like one deep solo back there. He definitely needs somebody else back there. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, while we critiqued him for the first, 4 weeks, we've had nothing but good things to say since, because there's been interceptions. He's ability,
more comfortable.
His ability to track a tipped ball is probably one of the best in the league, because that was his second pick that was tipped in the last couple weeks that he had this week. So that's really impressive. He's definitely getting a lot more comfortable in the defense, but we have seen a defense where Kevon Wallace sees 50% or more of snaps. And that is not a defense I ever want to have to see on the football field, because Kevon Wallace is not the answer as the safety 3. So at this point, Howie has to hope and pray that no injury comes to either of those 2 big safeties, because he knows he needs those 2 guys to be out there 90-95% of snaps every single game, if not 100% of snaps every single game. My thing on Jordan Davis, I agree with you, LJ. High ankle sprain for these explosive positions can have a lot more impact on a quarterback, as like it's not necessarily as bad, because yes, they have to throw off the ankle and stuff, but they don't have to explode out. Like these injuries to running backs, these injuries to wide receivers, tight ends, offensive and defensive linemen are a lot worse because of how they have to explode, because of the weight that goes on there. You're pushing, like, especially defensive linemen, you're taking double teams that you're like 900 pounds of human pushing back and forth. Like 4 weeks would be very promising. I think they're going to give them 6 to 8 weeks. They're going to give them the full length of time, because like you said, I do have concerns about Fletcher Cox getting additional playing time, because we have seen he gets gassed, he gets winded. He's not the guy who can play 60-70% of snaps anymore. Javon, they're going to have to lean on Milton Williams a lot more there. They're going to have to lean on Javon Hargrave a ton. Marlon Tuipulotu is going to have to see a lot more time as well. You got to keep Fletcher Cox in the 40 to 50% of snap range. If not, like, I'd prefer closer to 40. That's where he's at his best, when he can be fresh, when he can be rotated in and out. So I do have concerns. I did think that they would potentially go out and get a defensive tackle 3 or 4. Marlon Tuipulotu, like I was tweeting out earlier, with someone who said, why do you think defensive tackle is a need? He had a great first game against Detroit. And then as we've limited his snaps and allowed it more to go to Davis, Cox, and Hargrave and Williams, he has not looked good in the inconsistent playing time that he's had. So I do have concerns that Marlon is not going to necessarily be the answer. So we're definitely going to need like Milton Williams to step up, Javon Hargrave to continue to be the machine that he was this past week. And the edges to be able to get home. That's a big thing. Like keeping those tackles fresh was something I think that helped the edges a lot. So the edges are going to have to figure out how to get home with maybe not as much help from the defensive tackles.
It also helps with the addition of Robert Quinn. You could move Brandon Graham inside. So they'll be able to, if they want to go to their quote unquote NASCAR package on definite passing down. So we'll definitely see. But I think the schedule sets up to where it'll allow for they shouldn't get beat on the ground as bad when Jordan Davis isn't in the game. All right, so before we move on to the Texans, we again we're fitting in kind of a couple episodes here in this one. We're going to go to our unheralded player of the week for week 8 in the National Football League. Who is your unheralded player for last week, Connor?
I'm going to go with a kicker again, because in this game, it showed the almighty importance of a kicker. It also showed leave your goddamn helmet on after you get touchdown, DJ Moore. But Younghoe Koo is getting my unheralded player of the week. I know this is the second time I gave it to a kicker, but this is another opportunity to give it to a kicker because Eddie Pinheiro ended up missing that point after he missed, which was 15 yards further back. But then when he had an opportunity to redeem himself with a 33-yard field goal in overtime to win the game, he missed that as well. And the fact that he has a job today absolutely blows my mind. But that allowed Atlanta to get to 4-4. And you would think, oh, but that's not an Atlanta Falcons team that deserves to be there. They actually have the most points for in that division. They also have the most points against, but they have 200 points for to Tampa Bay's 146, New Orleans is 199, and Carolina's 158. So the fact that they're able to put the points up to be able to get those wins is massive, because who knows what could happen if you get in and be one of those surprise teams that gets in. Who knows what could happen. But Younghoe Koo, he went 3 for 3 on field goals and 4 for 4 on extra points, giving him 13 of the total 37 points for the Atlanta Falcons. And this season, he has hit 82% of field goals, including perfect within 39 yards, and then 8 for 11 from 40 plus yards out, and 20 for 20 in extra points, which equals a grand total of 62 of the 200 points for the Atlanta Falcons. Just flashing the importance of a kicker, and also flashing the importance of celebrate all you want, but leave your helmet on.
PJ Walker could have won the unheralded player of the week this week if they would have won that game. So my unheralded player of the week, I'm going to go with somebody in the division, and I hate doing this, but Taylor Heineke, the new starting quarterback with the Washington Commanders. He was 23-31, 279 yards, 1 touchdown, had an interception, but also had the game-winning rushing touchdown with 26 seconds left. And that offense just looks different when he's out there compared to Carson, and I like Carson. But you got to give Taylor Heineke a lot of credit. And this division just keeps winning. Minus the Giants this week. The NFC East through 8 weeks has the highest winning percentage for all teams combined at this point in the season in NFL history. And everybody thought it was going to be NFC least, but no, they're the NFC beast. The Eagles 7-0 should have a 4 or 5 game, potentially a 3-4 game lead. No, we only have a game and a half, 2 game lead right now, just because all the other teams are playing well. This division could have 3 playoff teams. We'll see. I still think the Giants are a little flukish, but there's talk of them maybe adding OBJ back to that roster. We'll see. But yeah, so they have a bye. I think both the Giants and Dallas both have their bye this week. As the Eagles go to Houston this week, and that transition us to week 9 in the National Football League, where the Philadelphia Eagles and the Houston Texans kick us off on Thursday night football. Connor, what you watching? Game 5 of the World Series or the Eagles game? Which one are you watching?
Well, I'm away for a work trip, work meetings, but I am definitely watching. If I have to have a choice, if I can't be in a bar with two TVs with both games on, but my attention is going to be more on the Philadelphia Eagles. You can't deny it. It's not a game. Now, if this was game 5, or if this is a deciding game for the Philadelphia Phillies series, which I really don't think it's going to be, then it makes it more interesting because then I'm going to definitely have to have 2 screens going in some way, shape, or form. But it's definitely going to be the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What's up, Dave? Thanks for joining us. Yay, Thursday NFL games. Yeah, well, the Thursday games aren't going away. Do you know how much money Amazon paid for this?
Like they deserve a better schedule. This has been an atrocity.
It's been awful. There's no good games on Thursday night, and then Thanksgiving. Can't wait for Thanksgiving. I hate turkey as it is. I'm gonna just sit my butt in front of the TV and watch football because I'm not a turkey fan. So I can't wait for Thanksgiving as well. And we're already in November. Our Thanksgiving, because I know, didn't you have your Thanksgiving last week, Connor?
We had it 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. We have ours in 3 weeks from this Thursday, I think. If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we're approaching that time where we are in the holiday season. But yes, so the Eagles and the Texans. The Eagles are probably 13-point favorites and 10-point favorites, whatever it is.
It was 13.5 last I saw.
Yeah. Looking at the Texans depth chart, so Chris put on the Texans. I have no idea who the Texans have to beat Slayer Bradbury, and I have no idea how the Texans front 7 slow down the Eagles running game. The only person they have, but what hurts them is they don't really have a good quarterback, is Brandon Cooks. But Brandon Cooks is pissed off right now. He wanted to be traded. He is not a happy camper. So, I mean, if I'm Lovie Smith, maybe you just say, hey, take this week off, refresh yourself, clear your mind. It's not going to happen. But if there's anybody on the Houston Texans offense that can beat you, it's Brandon Cooks. Damian Pierce is all right, but I think their offensive line, speaking of the Texans, I just don't know if they're going to be able to protect and block against the Eagles front. This could be another case where the Eagles jump out to an early lead. They start slow like they usually do, get into the second quarter. We talk about how the Eagles own the second quarter. They scored 14 points again. But every second quarter, they have the ball to start the second quarter. So, they could potentially score at the end of the first quarter probably if they want to, but they always start the second quarter with the ball, and that's why they're so good with the football. They've had 2 turnovers the entire year. They're plus 14, if I'm not mistaken, this year. It's amazing how well the Eagles protect the football. That could credit to Jalen Hurts, credit to Nick Sirianni, the way that the coaching staff emphasizes it week in and week out. And the only way the Texans are going to be able to have a chance in this game is if you turn the football over. And I don't see the Eagles turning the football over.
No, absolutely. And to kind of bounce back to the point about I have no idea how the Texans front 7 slowed down the Eagles running game. The Houston Texans are the worst, and they're in a tier of their own as worst Russian defense. They are allowing 186 yards per game on the ground versus the 31st place team is the Chicago Bears at 156. They give up a whole 30 extra yards over everybody. And then from there, it's, 156, 154, 141, 140. It's more of a chunk tier, but they are on a absolute different level for how bad their Russian defense is. This feels like one of those games where, we probably have 3 different Russian touchdowns from 3 different players, maybe 4. Even 4. I would not be shocked if we see the Boston Scott touchdown, we see the Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe this is a chance for a big man touchdown. Maybe this is a chance to get one of those touchdowns going, drop a funky play, maybe get Jason Kelsey in the end zone for a touchdown. I don't know, figure something out, draw it up, just like you did with Lane Johnson last season. But they are on another level of absolute terrible for the Russian attack. I don't think this is going to be one. Maybe to get the game out of reach, maybe they try a couple big throws. But this is one where you can just pound the ball over and over and over. And I feel like this can be a really boring Thursday night game. As much as we want it to be exciting, I would prefer it to be boring and us just bring this 186-yard average up a little bit more.
Well, you know that Jalen's going to want to show out in his hometown, so it wouldn't shock me if the first half it's they're throwing the ball, get Smitty involved. You know, obviously A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and then in the second half do what they do: ground the clock, run the ball down their throat, and you know you can have a big Miles Sanders game. You know, the one thing we didn't see much of last week was Jalen Hurts running. He had a couple of runs, he took a couple of sacks, but he didn't run the ball as often as he normally did, and that's good. Like, you don't want your quarterback running and taking unnecessary hits. So if he can stay protected, which the offensive line played out of control good. They were really good on Sunday against the Steelers. And looking at this Texans defense, they have Jerry Hughes, Malik Collins, the secondary, like their linebackers Christian Harris and Christian Kirksey. And then in the secondary, it's interesting. Derek Stingley Jr., the first cornerback taken in the draft this year out of LSU. He has the intangibles. Like, I know he was hurt his last year at LSU, but you know he has the potential. Steven Nelson, the Eagles' second corner last year, had a pick last week, so that should be interesting. I don't think Nelson can cover Devontae. Definitely can't cover AJ Brown. And then they're in the safety, Jalen Petrie, another safety, another rookie out of Baylor, and then Jonathan Owens. I don't like. While we said we're sitting here talking, we don't know if the Texans can stop the Eagles' run game. How do they stop them through the air? I think that's the big question. I just don't know if it's going to be able to happen.
And they're not even a good pass in defense. Like, they're middle of the pack. Like, they give up 217 yards per game, which is 17th in the league. But at the same time, why would you, like, I think that's skewed by the fact that why you don't even have to throw the ball that much on them, because they just give up so much on the ground. They give up 403 total yards between the two, which is they're one of three teams in the NFL that's given up 400 plus yards on defense. They're just so bad. They're just horrible at all levels. I love Derek Stingley. I think he's gonna, like, I've seen him make some really nice plays. He's really good. Sauce Gardner has looked incredible as well. Like, there were the cornerbacks that came out of the top of this class are looking really good. I just feel bad for Stingley because he's going to be in a spot where this could be painful for a few more years. Yeah, like this, and like the way, like, you see when people get out of Houston, the comments that they make about ownership, the comments that they make about the manager, the comment, like, there's just something's got to change, I think. And a lot of people really liked the coach that they had last year, the Baltimore Ravens guy, Culley. I think David Culley, who he had players respect, players played for him, they liked him, and then they fired him after 1 year. He was just kind of leveraged and used and dumped away, and then they bring in Lovie Smith, who's probably going to be the same this offseason.
And like, didn't they hire Lovie Smith after all this talk about there not being any minority coaches hired, like black coaches?
Yeah, they caught a lot of flack for firing a minority coach, and then suddenly, as they were interviewing a lineup of what. Yeah, they looked at Gannon, they lined up a bunch of white coaches, and then suddenly Lovie Smith gets this out of nowhere interview and ends up getting the job. And I don't think this is coincidence that situation happened. I think there is, and I understand, I know it's a new manager in Houston, so he's just getting his feet wet, and he probably should have kept Culley around for another season, seen how the team played, got a better vision of things, because now you got a disgruntled Brandon Cooks. You don't have your franchise quarterback in Davis Mills. They wanted to see if it was the answer. He's 100% not the answer. He's a really bad quarterback. I look at it like Dameon Pierce has been really good. Derek Stingley has been really good. Laramie Tunsil's a decent left tackle, not necessarily great. Kenyon Green's a solid left guard. You have a few pieces to work with, but there's a lot of pieces you still have to figure out. And the big thing is, how are you going to get some of these guys in free agency to even want to come to your team? It's going to be like the New York Jets of last year. Nobody wanted to go to the Jets. Now the Jets are ahead of schedule in their rebuild. Robert Saleh is getting a lot of respect. Joe Douglas is drafting incredibly well, which we never had any doubts of. And now the Jets are in a great spot where free agents are going to want to come. But now the Texans are going to have to suffer through this situation where free agents likely aren't going to want to come for a couple years. They don't have a ton of draft capital to work with because they won't trade anybody away. They're just in a really bad spot where there's just going to be like 3 or 4 years of a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. I would probably argue the Texans and the Bears are probably in two of the teams that are in the worst spots. Whereas, like, I think the Lions are leaps and bounds ahead. I
The
think the
Bears have a
Falcons
lot of
are way
money.
ahead.
The Bears have a lot of money though that they could spend next year, and a lot of draft picks. So
But you got to think, are people
I just don't. I don't think their
too?
coaching staff's good, and I don't think Justin Fields is good. But
Mhm.
I think they're ahead of the Texans. I think.
Oh, I think the Texans might be in one of the worst spots, and I think it all goes back to everybody who leaves has something to say about their time there. And it all ends up looking really bad when those types of situations happen, because then free agents say, okay, I'll take your phone call, but I'm going to take less money elsewhere. I'm going to go elsewhere. I don't want to be in Houston. But I digress. I don't want to continue to rant about that situation. But if Brandon Cooks is disgruntled, they were without Nico Collins last week, so they could be down there. They could have a disgruntled wide receiver one who hasn't even been playing that well, mostly on the back of Davis Mills not being very good. And then you could be out your wide receiver two, Nico Collins again, who's been probably your best wide receiver. And then defensive tackle Malik Collins missed last week. So if you have him out, then you have two defensive tackles, rookie defensive tackles subbing in Kirk Heinisch and Thomas Booker, which is definitely not a good spot against this offensive line, because this offensive line is absolutely going to feast on these guys having to sub in as options to cover Malik Collins. It's just this needs to be a win. This has to be a win. This feels too much like we're going to talk up a game, and it is a game that now I sit there and in the pit of my stomach, I'm like, they wouldn't, would they? But then I see it's a Thursday night. I see it's that ultimate type of disappointment game.
With Hurts and Sirianni, they won't allow that to happen.
I pray.
I think that they're going to stay level-headed. Now the big question is, what kind of game plan do you have? Because you're not practicing this week. You're having a walkthrough. You probably had a walkthrough today. You'll leave tomorrow, and the game's on Thursday. So it comes down to what type of game plan do the Eagles come out? Is it simplified? We'll take our best 25 pass plays, our best 25 or the most comfortable 25 pass plays that Jalen can throw, and our favorite 25 run plays. This is going to be the game plan. Now, I also know that towards the end of last week, when you already had the game plan installed for Pittsburgh, you had other coaches already going over Houston. So that kind of helps in that fact, where you already had a game plan in place, and again, walkthroughs. Maybe you met yesterday just to get to meet with the trainers and whatnot. Today was a walkthrough. Tomorrow a morning walkthrough. Jump on a plane, go to Texas, go to Houston, and get ready for the game on Thursday. We already saw after the game on Sunday that they had stationary bikes in the locker room. Get your cool down. Get your bodies right, because it is really tough to play a football game 3 days later. I know that they've been doing it already for a couple of years, but even though they've been doing it, it's still hard to get your body mentally or get your body physically right 3 days later. It takes a lot. I mean, I played semi-pro and I was hurting a week later, and that's not NFL football. So I can only imagine how these NFL guys feel.
Absolutely. Thursday games are really tough, but I mean, all you need to do is, I didn't look up what they're actually putting up. I want to put one sec. Let me pull up their points per game. So Houston scored 16.6 points per game. 3 touchdowns. You should be in a prime spot. Get yourself ahead through the first and the second quarter. Lay back, run the ball, get comfortable, run the ball, run the clock down, and just bury them. That's all you got to do. Get your 2-3 score lead. And I see no way that offense is able to keep up pound for pound, putting up points with you, especially when they're averaging 16.6 points per game. We average 28. Your gap there is already 12 points. So you should be able to get to that point where you feel comfortable, get yourself up 14-0, start running the football, lean on your run game more. If you start feeling really comfortable, you get up 3 scores, you get up 4 scores, throw in the backup players. Don't risk any injury. Give them that extra time off. Don't worry about it. You shouldn't have to worry about the game getting any closer. But, if it gets within 2 scores, slap the starters back up. But they would probably get it to the point where it's completely out of hand by the start of the fourth quarter and then shift all the backups in and just watch things roll from there. So hopefully that's how things go. I mean, I don't know how much we have to talk about impact players, because I think, like, I have already mentioned who I think my impact players are: Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and I think all of them are going to have big nights. I'd mark it down as 3 separate anytime touchdowns for these running backs. Like, this is what the night feels like, because Boston Scott could come in that fourth quarter, gets more looks in the third and the fourth, and he bounces off one of those big runs, gets you the touchdown with Gardner Minshew on the field and Britton Covey and Zach Pascal at wide receiver. One of those situations.
Maybe Greg Ward. No, I'm kidding.
Well, who knows? I don't think Tyree Jackson comes back on the short week, but we're about to have to make room for Tyree Jackson here soon. I'm going to be interested to see.
Are we though?
They're gonna have to make a tough decision on that, because they got Goddard, Stoll, and Calcaterra, which I'm fine with. I don't know why they opened the window for him. I feel like he's one of those guys you should have just said, we're still getting some mixed reviews from the doctors, and just kick the can as far down the road as possible. Because what position do you want to take away from
exactly
to bring Tyree Jackson back? Because you could do Britton Covey, but you're not going to roll out 4 wide receivers. And no, Tyree Jackson is not going as your 5th wide receiver. So they do have a tough decision to make there.
Let's be honest. We really primarily use 3 receivers.
100%. But if there's ever an injury.
I'm not banking on an injury, though.
No, you don't want bank on an injury. And in a situation where we could be blowing a team out, you don't want A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and, well, Quez Watkins is fine. You can march him out in any circumstance.
Pascal and put Gainwell at the slot.
This is true.
So there are ways, though. Britton Covey has done nothing for me this year. You were high on him coming into the year, and I don't know why. But, again, special teams is the weakness of this team right now, and I don't know if that's because they don't have the players, or maybe Mike Clay's just not a good special teams coach.
Things have regressed significantly with Michael Clay and as a special teams coordinator. And I mean, we always throw flack at Britton Covey, but it's not like the flip side of the ball should not catch some flack either, because we've seen some decent sized punt returns. We make almost every punt returner look pretty good. Like, I don't know what it is. Last year we had Andre Chichera as one of the gunners, and he was a special teams ace, and now he's sitting on our practice squad week in and week out, which, for the life of me, if this was a guy who was your special teams ace, one of your special teams captains, why was he not making the roster again? I was strongly for him over Kevon Wallace, because I wasn't sold on Kevon Wallace. But for some reason, I feel like Howie is in the ear of Jonathan Gannon saying, come on, give Kevon more leeway, give him a chance. And the chances are up with Kevon Wallace. It's just not worth it. So there were guys who did really well on special teams that we're just not seeing. There's guys that are clearly wastes of time on special teams. Like you said, Britton Covey, Kevon Wallace, some wasted bodies out there, offensively, defensively, and in special teams. There's got to be some things changed, but I also think it starts at the special teams coordinator. It used to be such a focus, and it felt like they kept certain people on the roster for the jobs that they could do within special teams. Now it feels like they just do it to fill the offense and the defense, and then they're like, okay, well, anyone who's a second stringer, you can have in your special teams room. Here you go. And it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right, and neither side, I get it, we're going to continue to trash Britton Covey, but neither side is exempt from being criticized on special teams.
You're right, and hopefully they get it figured out, because special teams could haunt them one day. It could cost them big time in a game against a better team and whatnot. So we'll see going down the line. Obviously, we know that the Eagles aren't going 17-0, but getting to 8-0 it would be great this week, and it'll make Sunday even better and less stressful. You sit back, watch the Red Zone channel all day, and while we watch the other teams in the conference, and only one in the division, I guess it's Washington plays. Watch the other teams just go out there and hopefully lose. Get Minnesota to lose or something. But we'll see what happens. But, this game on Thursday, I mean, while on paper it should be a cakewalk, I never go into games thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. So hopefully the Eagles take, and I think they will take it seriously. Like you said, jump out to a quicker lead, run the ball, get the backups in the second half.
Definitely. And I can't remember what our final for sure score predictions were last week, but I know me and you were very close to dead on. I think I feel like I had 34-17 or 34 to something like that. And you had 35 to like 20 or something like that. I feel like
I thought I had
or vice
30,
versa, but we might have been
I think
vice
I had
versa.
31-13.
Yeah,
it was 31-13 or 31-17. It was one of the two.
We were close. We were close on it. And I mean, if you're asking for a prediction for this week, I'm probably going to go pretty much similarly, except less. I think while Kenny Pickett sucks, I think that offense was leaps and bounds better than this offense. You had Pat Freiermuth, you had Najee Harris. Yes, did we shut some of these guys out? Yes, but George Pickens, Chase Claypool at the time, you had Deontay Johnson. You had guys who could make plays. Jaylen Warren was looking pretty good out of their backfield. Like, you had guys who were making plays and doing things that allowed them to get the amount of points that they got. I don't see a way the Houston Texans get I'm probably going to be like you of last week and go with 10 or 13 points. Mm-hmm. Unless take the score when the backups come in, because they might be both scoring the backups. That might be what drives the score up. But
yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be close. I mean, the Eagles should win 37-13, something like that. But yeah, this is a game, and the Thursday night nature of it, having to travel, all that is what is a little, I don't want to say worrisome, but it is a little bit worrisome that you got to make it's a short week. You have to travel. You don't get much practice time, or even if it's just a walkthrough, and you're on the road. And while there's going to be a bunch of Eagles fans there, and nobody cares about Houston right now because they don't like the owner, they don't like the situation. So it should be a bunch of green, as there are mostly every away stadium. If you take the Houston crowd out of it, let the Eagles fans start celebrating. Maybe the Texans, it'll be so bad that the Texans will put the World Series game up on the Jumbotron. That's what we would like to see happen Thursday night in Houston between the Eagles and Texans.
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, we will have a ton to talk about if this game's remotely close. Unless it's garbage time play, if the starters have to play through the fourth quarter, we likely will have some things to discuss, some major collapses on some side of the football. But what about you? I kind of alluded to my impact player on offense. I'll pick it up with my defensive impact player as well. Last week I picked Josh Sweat. He had a pretty good game. He tied for the most pressures, although he didn't get any sacks. He was constantly in the face of Kenny Pickett. This week, I'm going to go with I feel like the secondary is going to have multiple picks. So I feel like I got to pick somebody there. I feel like, this is tough. I'm going to go with Darius Slay. Darius Slay, I actually looked it up today. He has the second most interceptions in the NFL with 3, and he has the most dropped interceptions with 4. This is a night where I think he can redeem himself and have a multi-pick night, if I were to say. Most
interceptions. How many does it see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson have, 4?
No, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is 3, I think, and I think he's and I was looking at cornerbacks. I can't remember who has the most, but there's one with 4, and then there's Trayvon Diggs and Darius Slay with 3. So, but Darius Slay, this feels like it could be a multi-pick night, and I might be wrong on which secondary member, but I'd also love to see Marcus Epps get his first interception of the season. That would be kind of fun.
All right, so my defensive player, I'm going to go with TJ Edwards. He had a hell of a game last week. So I'm going to go with TJ Edwards. Houston's going to try to run Dameon Pierce downhill. He's going to be running right at Edwards. So let's see him continue he's having a Pro Bowl year. I don't care what anybody says. Through the first half of the year, TJ Edwards.
And when we talked on previous episodes where we talked about draft needs, I wanted Dameon Pierce in Philadelphia. I liked him as a complimentary back to Miles Sanders because look at the way he runs. He runs with anger. He runs with intent. He would have been such a perfect complement, and it just never came to fruition. And now, look, now I wish it did come to fruition. I think he was a 4th-round pick, though, so I can't remember. Like in the 3rd, we went to Kobe Dean, so we wouldn't have been able to go there. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, did we have a 4th-rounder this year? We may not have had a 4th.
I don't think we did. That might have been a part of the trade for AJ Brown, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we had it, but like I really like Dameon Pierce. I really do. And I think this is an opportunity also, while you say TJ Edwards, for Jonathan Gannon to test some different things out. Try some new things, test some different blitzes, some different stunts, and see what's going to work in a game situation.
Yeah, let's make sure we have a big lead too, and don't play passive. Be aggressive. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I'm gonna go Devontae. Like
you did this last week, and he.
No, I went Dallas Goedert last week.
Oh, you did do Dallas Goedert last week, yes.
So week 1, remember, AJ Brown had the big game, all the targets, and there was talk. And then the next week, Devontae had a good game.
I think it was a fitness roofer that said multi-TD game for Devontae Smith. I think it actually ended up being AJ Brown, but he got it right with wide receiver, and he did say the wide receivers would have a big game. So
yeah, but I'm gonna go Devontae. He had a drop last week. I know he had a couple catches and whatnot, but they're gonna get Devontae in the end zone a couple of times, I think. And the Eagles should score a bunch of points. And again, hopefully early in the game, early in the 4th quarter, get the backups in there and. You get a nice little mini bye after this week, heading into a Monday night. So you go from a Sunday to a Thursday, then you got Thursday to that following Monday night. So it should be a nice rest. And as long as we can get out of here healthy, steamrolling in the second half of the season.
Absolutely. I wish we could have had more hard-hitting analysis for you in this game and like preview, but there's so little to preview about the Houston Texans. It's like it was kind of like the perfect thing. We crushed the Steelers, so we have 30 minutes of just whatever praise we can find, plus throw in how much we loathe the special teams right now. And then we had 30 minutes of let's just talk about how great this offense is going to be. Eventually, Houston fans, you might head in the right directions with the Texans, but things are looking like it could be you better buckle up. This could be a long drive.
Yep. So safe to say we both have the Eagles winning Thursday night. We will be back next Tuesday for a reaction to this Thursday night game. And we have to figure out our preview because I'm not going to be here next weekend. Well,
we'll likely have a Painted Lines surprise guest for our next Friday to preview the Monday Nighter against what we hoped would be Carson Wentz.
But it's not.
But we get Taylor Heineke.
But yes, so thank you everybody that's tuning in live here on the stream for listening to the Kelly Green Hour. For Connor, I'm LJ. Go Phillies, go Eagles.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.